Good day, Tagum City, especially to our dear learners and parents who are tuning in right now. I am your teacher host, Melosa C. De Leon from La Filipina National High School. It's another day of meaningful learning, and welcome once again to Salida TeleRadyo, where you will learn lessons that will be helpful to you. Today, you will learn about preparing and cooking meat, a lesson from grade 12 Cookery and C2. Please help me welcome our teacher broadcaster, Sir Philip John Castomayor.
Thank you, Mamelosa. Good day, everyone. In this lesson, we will talking about preparing and cooking meats. This is the first part of the lesson, and the topics included are the different kinds of meat, the market forms of meat, and the different methods in cooking the meat. We have three objectives for today's lessons, and you are expected to do the following. First, identify the kinds of meat. Second, discuss the appropriate cooking method for meat cuts. And third, prepare meat cuts according to the given recipe. But before to proceed to our proper lesson, let's have an activity first. You need to arrange the jumbled letters to form the word related to our topic. Use the clues provided to answer this activity. You will only be given 5 seconds to answer each jumbled word. This is now your first activity. What is your answer, student? The correct answer is meat. Meat refers to an animal flesh that is used as food. This may include animal parts like muscles and other edible organs. This is a rich source of protein, vitamins, and minerals that is essential for our body. And this is now your second slide. What is your answer, students? The correct answer is veal. It is the meat came from calves between 4 to 5 months. There are two kinds of veal, the milk-fed and the grass-fed. Milk-fed veal is more tender, but the grass-fed veal has a better flavor. There are characteristics of good quality veal. First, good quality grass-fed veal is pale pink. Second, milk-fed veal is off-white and soft and moist. Third, it has fine texture and puffy connective tissues around the flesh. And lastly, there is little fat but the bones are in large proportion to the amount of meat. Alright, students, here is your third slide. What is your educated guess for this? The correct answer is beef. Beef comes from mature cattle between 15 to 20 months old. Young beef has a small amount of fat and less flavorful and juicy than matured beef. When good quality beef is first cut, the flesh should be red, smooth, firm, and moist. High quality beef have a smooth covering of firm, creamy white fat that is evenly distributed over the exterior portion of the meat. And here are the good characteristics of good quality beef. First, it should have smooth covering of firm, creamy white fat. Second, the beef must be firm, bright, red in color, with yellow fat, free from slime and odor. Number 3, select meat with good fat marbling quality. And lastly, select pink and soft bone marrow for a more tender meat. Here is another activity for you. What is your answer for this? Alright, the correct answer is pork. It refers to the meat of swine. Good quality pork comes from young animals, usually 7 to 12 months of age. Pork is usually pink but may be darker when meat comes from old swine. There is more fat in pork than in other meat. It is very firm and very wide. It is characterized by its pinkish or rose color. The tender cuts of meats are found along the back. Here are the good characteristics of pork. First, it should be firm and pink. Second one, there must be a good surround of firm white milky fat. Third, lean pork lacks flavor. And lastly, the bone should be small and white in color. And for your last activity, what is your answer for this? The correct answer is lamb. Lamb meat came from young sheep aging 1 year or less, and mutton is from older sheep. So again, the right term for the meat, if it is a young sheep, it should be called lamb, and for the older sheep, it should be called mutton. The meat is tender, flavorful, and juicy with a pinkish red color. The flesh of the lamb varies in color from the light pink to dark red depending on the age of the animal and the variety. Here are the characteristics of a good quality lamb and mutton. First, mutton is heavier and the flesh is darker than the lamb. Second, mutton also has a stronger smell than the lamb. Alright, students, read the words again. From the words revealed, what do you think is your favorite meat? I know you all have different answers. So let's proceed to the 4 kinds of doneness and meat, or the degree of doneness. First, we have the rare. Second, medium rare. The third one is medium. And the last one is well done. Let's define them one by one. Let's start with the rare. When pressed with a finger, the meat is very soft with jelly-like texture. Medium, on the other hand, when pressed with a finger, meat feels springy and resistant. While medium, when pressed with a finger, meat feels firm and there is a definite resistance. And lastly, well done, when pressed with a finger, the meat feels hard and rough. There are also nutrient content that can be found from the meat because nutrient content are not only exclusive for the vegetables. High quality protein is the major constituent of meat after water, accounting for about 20% of its weight, while fat content can vary widely according to the grade of meat and its cut. Carbohydrates in meat contains very little. Glycogen found in liver and muscle tissue, and it is always present when the animal is alive. But the glucose that makes up the glycogen is broken down to lactic acid during and after the slaughter. Meat is also an excellent source of certain B vitamins and minerals like iron, zinc, copper, phosphorus, and a few other trace minerals. There are also different market forms of meat. They are the fresh meat, the chilled meat, the cured meat, and the processed meat. Fresh meat is a meat that is recently slaughtered and has not been preserved or frozen. On the other hand, chilled meat is a meat that is placed in a chiller or slightly cold, while cured meat is preserved by salting, smoking, and aging. And lastly, the processed meat is a kind of meat that is preserved by chemical process. We have also methods of cooking the meat. The dry heat cooking method and the moist heat cooking method. Cooking always requires the transfer of heat from a heat source to the food being cooked. Meat can be cooked in one of the two ways, dry heat method and moist heat method. Each methods can be used in various ways, but the general rule is use dry heat for tender cuts of meat and moist heat for less tender cuts. The following are the dry heat cooking method. We have the roasting and baking, grilling and broiling, sauteing and pan frying, as well as deep frying. Using the appropriate cooking method for the type of food being prepared is a major part of the Cookery 12. Tough cuts of meat like beef brisket or lamb and shank need to be cooked slowly at low heat for a long time and with plenty of moisture. If prepared properly, these cuts can be incredibly tender and delicious. We have the roasting and baking. Roasting and baking are forms of dry heat cooking that use hot and dry air to cook the food. Like other dry heat cooking methods, roasting and baking brown the surface of the food, which in turn develops complex flavors and aroma. We also have grilling and broiling. Grilling and broiling are dry heat cooking methods that rely on heat being conducted through the air from an open flame. This type of cooking produces browning reaction on the surface of food, thus encouraging the development of complex flavors and aromas. Broiling and grilling require the food to be quite close to the heat source, which in this case is likely to be an open flame. Next, we have also frying. It is a form of dry heat cooking that uses a very hot pan and a small amount of fat to cook the meat very quickly. Next is deep frying. Deep frying is a dry heat cooking method utilizing fat or oil to cook the meat. Since deep frying involves submerging food in hot, liquid fat, it might take some time to get used to the idea that it is actually a form of dry heat cooking. But if you ever seen the violent reaction of hot oil even to a tiny drop of water, you know that oil and water are a couple of opposites that has nothing to do with each other. Next, we also have moist heat cooking that includes poaching, boiling, steaming, braising, and stewing. Moist heat cooking use water, liquid, or steam to transfer heat to food. The first one is poaching. It is the process of cooking meat by slow simmering of liquid in an uncovered pan. Use meat cuts that you would use for roasting like loins. The next one is boiling, the hottest among the three stages, where the water reaches the highest possible temperature of 212 degrees Fahrenheit. It's actually the least likely to the three to be used for cooking. That's because the violent agitation caused by the rolling boil can be too rough on food and will often damage it. We also have steaming. It is a method that cooks the meat through a hot steam with the help of steamer. Steaming is a moist heat cooking technique that employs hot steam to conduct the heat to the food item. Steaming can be done on stove top with a pot containing a small amount of liquid that is brought to a simmer. The item to be cooked is then placed in a basket suspended above the liquid and the pot covered. We also have braising and stewing. Braising is a form of moist heat cooking in which the item to be cooked is partially covered with liquid and then simmered slowly at a low temperature. Though it can be done on the stove top, braising is best done in the oven because the heat fully surrounds the pot and causes the food to cook more evenly than if it were only heated from below. And now, let us determine whether you have learned of what you are expected to learn through evaluation. This is now the instruction. Match column A with column B, then write only the letter of the best answer on your paper. For number 1, dry heat cooking. Again, for number 1, dry heat cooking. Number 2, rare. Number 2, rare. Next item for number 3 is moist heat cooking. Again, it's moist heat cooking. For number 4, we have frying. Again, for number 4, we have frying. For the last item, number 5, meat. Again, number 5, meat. Alright. This time, let us check your paper. Are you ready? The answer for number 1 is letter B. Any cooking technique where heat is transferred is what we call dry heat cooking. For number 2, the answer is letter C. Rare is a jelly-like textured meat. For number 3, the answer is letter D. Moist heat cooking includes braising, steaming, or poaching. While number 4, the answer is letter A. Frying require a very hot pan. And for the last item for number 5, the answer is letter E. Meat is a term for the flesh of cattle. Alright, it's time for your homework. Based from the discussion, cooking of meat need to be timed in order not to be overcooked and undercooked. As we advocate time consciousness and honesty, perform recipes using different methods of cooking. Your menu is roasted meat. You are going to evaluate your performance using the rubrics provided on page 286. Alright, for today's lesson, we were able to identify meat classification, methods of cooking meat, and learn how to present it. And that's what we called meaty lesson. This has been your teacher broadcaster, Teacher PJ. Thank you so much for listening with us today. Till we meet again, I will now turn you over to Ma'am Melosa C. De Leon. Thank you.
That was great. Thank you, Sir PJ. Thank you, viewers and listeners, for tuning in. We hope you learned something today. Bye for now.